Outside Chicago, autumn, 1938. A remote agricultural region located 73 miles northwest of Chicago, a place whose name was rarely mentioned. The farmhouse stood so far away that it was almost not worth marking on a map. The dirt road had turned into mud with the rain, and as the wind passed through the cornfields, it left behind a low, whispering hum. The trees around the house were old, their branches bent low, their trunks covered in moss. Whoever came here felt as if they were being watched. The windows of the house were dark. But it was clear that there had been life inside. At least, a short while ago. There were footprints in front of the door. Too many. Too chaotic to belong to a single person, overlapping and disordered. The rain was trying to erase them all. Margaret Hale lived alone in this house. She had lost her husband years ago. Her son lived in another city. She was distant from her neighbors, withdrawn, but she always kept her home tidy. The curtains were closed. The doors were locked. That evening, everything was as usual. Until the sounds began. The neighbors would later say they first heard footsteps. Then whispers. Then a dull thud. Margaret was in the living room. The first knife wound was not sudden. It was deep. But not fatal. When the second strike came, she staggered backward. The third blow struck her side. Blood spread across the carpet. Margaret tried to scream, but her voice was lost within the crowd in the room. She fell. But she did not die. She pressed her hands to the floor. Her breathing was uneven. Her heart pounded as if it would tear through her chest. The attackers stepped back. They waited. They watched. Margaret began to crawl through the blood. The distance between the living room and the kitchen was short, but that night it felt endless. Her fingernails scraped the floor. Each breath burned her lungs. The trail she left behind was not only blood, it was desperation. When she reached the kitchen doorway, someone approached her from behind. This time, there was no rush. The knife was placed against her throat. Cold. Decisive. With a single motion, it was cut. Margaret Hale died on the cold kitchen floor, her eyes open. The faces behind the masks withdrew silently. The murder weapon was taken with them. When morning came, the rain had stopped. But the traces were still there. Footprints surrounded the house like a ring. Too many people, with a single purpose. The door was open. The house was silent. And it was the kind of silence that would catch Edgar Blackwood's attention. The next morning. The sun struggled to appear through the clouds. When the rain stopped, only a heavy scent of earth remained. The area around the farmhouse was silent. Even the birds had not returned. The first person to arrive at Margaret Hale's house was Thomas Reed, who lived a few hundred meters away. Margaret swept her porch every morning at 8. That morning, there was no sound of a broom. The curtains were still closed. The door was ajar. Thomas called out first.
"Margaret?"
No answer. When he pushed the door open, the smell stopped him. Metallic. Heavy. Suffocating. As he stepped into the living room, his foot caught on something. He bent down. The dark stain on the carpet had not been caused by rain. His eyes moved toward the kitchen. Margaret Hale was lying on the floor. Her throat had been cut. Her eyes were open. There was a frozen look of surprise on her face, as if she had realized something at the very last moment. Thomas backed away. His breathing quickened. His knees trembled. He ran outside and rushed to the nearest telephone. When he called the police, he said only one sentence.
"I think my neighbor has been murdered."
When the sheriff and 2 deputies arrived at the farmhouse, it was not even 11 yet. The area was cordoned off. The first team inside reached the same conclusion quickly. This did not look like an accident. This was not a crime of sudden rage. This was a deliberate murder. The body was in the kitchen, but the blood trail began in the living room. Drag marks were obvious. There had been a struggle. Multiple stab wounds. But no knife. The drawers had not been searched. Money was untouched. Valuables were still there. This was not a robbery. There were no signs of forced entry. The door had not been broken. Margaret had known her killers, or at least she had opened the door to them. Thomas sat in the sheriff's office, his hands still shaking. He answered the questions, but the words came out with difficulty.
When did you last see her?
Yesterday, in the late afternoon, she was closing the curtains.
Did you hear anything?
Yes, but I didn't think it was important.
What did you hear?
Voices more than one. But out here, people sometimes have guests.
Screaming?
No. Or, maybe I did. But because of the wind.
Thomas Reed's statement was inconsistent. But there was no evidence to accuse him. No blood on him. His shoes were clean. Still, something was missing. The murder weapon had not been found. Witnesses were unclear. There were many fingerprints, but most were overlapping. And most importantly, this murder was too orderly. The sheriff sighed as he closed the file.
This isn't our Joe. This case needs someone from Chicago.
One name was written on the cover. Edgar Blackwood. The file was placed on Edgar's desk a few days later. Rain stains still marked the cover. Edgar turned the pages. Studied the photographs. Paused at the drag marks. Patrick leaned over his shoulder.
This isn't an ordinary murder.
No. This is a matter of belief.
When Edgar Blackwood and Patrick arrived at the farmhouse, the rain had started again. It was light but persistent. The ground was still soft, the footprints had not been completely erased. The moment Edgar stepped out of the car, he looked around. The house. It was not positioned at the center of the land, but rather as if it had been deliberately pushed to the edge.
For someone who wants to live alone, this place is too exposed.
And too isolated for someone who doesn't.
They walked around the property. Edgar knelt and touched the mud, examining the footprints. Most were random, but some moved in the same direction, with the same spacing between steps.
They came together. They didn't scatter.
The living room was still a crime scene. The blood had dried, but the marks were intact. Edgar knelt on the floor, running his fingers along the edge of the drag marks.
She fell here. No panic. The first wounds weren't fatal.
Patrick was standing in the kitchen. His eyes were fixed on the floor.
It ended here. The throat cut, controlled.
This wasn't done by one person.
One held her, one stabbed, one watched.
Silence fell. Edgar walked to the kitchen window and pointed outside.
No escape. They were deliberately slow.
Thomas Reed was waiting for them in front of his house. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. He was exhausted. He avoided Edgar's gaze.
Tell us once more, how did you find the Margaret Halley?
The door was open. I went in. Then, I saw her.
Did you notice her because of the smell or because you saw her?
First, I saw her.
You mentioned the smell earlier.
Well, it was mixed. Everything was mixed.
Edgar did not harden his gaze. He softened it.
What was your relationship with Margaret like?
Good. She was a quiet woman.
Did she have visitors?
No.
Patrick shot Edgar a brief look. It might not have been a lie. But it was incomplete. Thomas's wife, Eleanor Reed, was pouring tea in the kitchen. Edgar noticed her hands trembling.
Did you hear anything last night?
There was wind.
Human voices?
No.
Patrick looked out the window.
The wind doesn't sound like that.
Eleanor set the cup down on the counter a little too hard.
People around here mind their own business.
Edgar thanked her. But in his notebook, he wrote only one word. Fear. The other neighbors. 1 house, 2 houses, 3. The answers were similar. Eyes avoided. Sentences trailed off. Some said they didn't know Margaret. Some said she was different. But all of them said the same thing. We're quiet people. As they walked between the houses, Patrick spoke in a low voice.
Too many quiet people in one place.
This is a community.
When they returned to the car, the rain intensified. Patrick lit a cigarette.
Thomas is lying.
Yes. But he's not the killer.
His wife?
She knows something. But she didn't do it.
These people act together.
And someone tells them what to do.
As the car moved along the muddy road, Edgar had only one thought. This murder had not been committed merely to silence a woman. It was a message. And the message was still there. As the sun sank behind the cornfields, Edgar Blackwood pulled the car over to the side of the road. From a distance, the farmhouses looked alike, but Edgar could now distinguish the details. The same type of door knocker on every house. The same wooden carvings on every porch. And on some doorsteps, the same marking. Patrick crouched and looked at the ground.
These aren't random.
No, they're calling signs.
They were small symbols carved into the thresholds. At first glance, they looked like marks left by farming tools, but when examined closely, they were symmetrical. Deliberate. Edgar copied the symbol into his notebook.
This is a marking system.
To know who belongs where.
As darkness fell, one of the neighbors they had questioned earlier stepped out of her house. Eleanor Reed. She had a dark-colored scarf over her head. She was in a hurry. She looked around, then started walking. Edgar did not start the engine.
We'll go on foot.
They kept their distance. Left space between them. Eleanor followed a narrow path into the cornfield. There, a half-collapsed storage building stood. Light was leaking from inside. Patrick whispered.
A meeting.
They didn't approach the building, but they were close enough. Voices came from inside. Low conversations. Then the door opened. The man who stepped out stopped in front of Eleanor. Tall. Thin. A hat cast his face into shadow. He wore a city man's coat, something that did not belong here. Edgar held his breath. Patrick murmured.
This man, he's not from here.
The man spoke. His voice was calm. Commanding. Eleanor lowered her head. This was not a conversation. This was obedience. The man took a small object from his pocket and handed it to Eleanor. She accepted it with both hands. Then the man left as he had come. He got into a car. The license plate was covered with mud. Edgar wrote the plate number in his notebook. Incomplete. But enough. Patrick turned to Edgar.
That's the leader.
Not yet.
What do you mean?
This one is a messenger. His face is open, recognizable.
So there's someone above him.
There always is.
After the storage building emptied, they went inside. There were remnants of candles on the floor. Circles drawn with chalk. Fabric pieces hanging on the wall. And one more thing. Edgar bent down. On the ground was the same marking as the one at Margaret's house. The same symbol. The same carving. Edgar stood up.
Now I'm sure.
This is a cult.
And Margaret tried to leave.
When night fell, Edgar and Patrick sat silently in the car. Patrick finally spoke.
These people kill together.
And stay silent together. We're done listening.
The rain had started again. The drop striking the window broke the silence inside the room, but they did nothing to scatter the thoughts. Edgar Blackwood sat at his desk, spreading every note, drawing, and photograph he had collected in front of him. Patrick pulled a chair back and sat down.
These are ordinary people. Farmers, housewives, the elderly.
No. These are transformed people.
He pulled one sheet from the pile. Symbols copied from doorsteps were drawn on it.
Cults don't hide themselves. They distinguish.
On the first page of his notebook, Edgar wrote a single word in large letters.
This community is hierarchical. At the bottom are the listeners. They only attend. They don't ask questions.
The neighbors.
Yes. Above them are the practitioners. Those who prepare the rituals. Those who clean the space. Those who place the candles. Then there are the witnesses. They watch. Even if no blood is shed, they are present. Because to witness is to become part of the crime.
And that's why everyone is guilty.
Exactly.
At the very top, he drew a single circle.
And here, the voice.
The leader.
No, the leader may be visible, but the voice is untouchable.
Edgar pointed to the photographs from the storage building. Candles, chalk circles, fabric pieces.
The purpose of rituals is not worship. It's connection.
Triple symmetry. Yes, 3 is the number of completion for them.
Edgar turned another photograph over. The fabric hanging on the wall.
These colors. Brown, black, and dark red.
Soil, darkness, and blood.
And all of it fits rural life. It doesn't attract attention.
The rituals were performed at night. Rain was preferred. It muffled sound. Erased traces. And most importantly, it deepened fear. Edgar picked up Margaret's photograph. He stared at it for a long moment.
This cult doesn't choose its victims at random. They choose the one who breaks away.
Margaret wanted to leave.
Yes, and that disrupts the order.
Edgar wrote a sentence in his notebook. Disobedience equals contamination.
Ritual murder. The first blows don't kill. The victim tries to escape. Fear spreads.
And the final blow, the throat.
The silencing. A message.
Edgar recalled the wooden pieces he had seen in one of the neighbors' houses.
Masks. They're tools of identity erasure.
So no one feels personally guilty.
Yes, I didn't do it. We did. Masks don't only cover faces. They cover conscience.
Then why is the leader distant?
Because the leader must be invisible. He gives orders. He comes. He goes. And his hands never touch the blood.
Edgar walked to the window. Rain streamed down the glass.
This cult feeds not on fear, but on the need to belong.
So how do we break it?
By shaking the belief.
Only one sheet remained on the table. The incomplete license plate number. Edgar slipped it into his pocket. Edgar Blackwood never rushed into traps. He built them. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still soaked. Mud clung to the tires of the rented car as Edgar slowed near the edge of the farmland. The lights of distant houses flickered weakly, like watchful eyes pretending not to see. Patrick looked out the window.
You're sure this will work?
Edgar didn't answer immediately. He turned off the engine.
They're cautious, but they're also proud. And pride always listens.
The next morning, Edgar did something deliberate. He visited the local sheriff's office. Not secretly. Not quietly. He asked questions where he could be seen. Mentioned Margaret's name out loud. Spoke of groups, meetings, shared beliefs. Patrick watched from the hallway.
You're making noise.
Yes. Noise travels.
By evening, Edgar ensured the rumor had shape. A detective from Chicago believes the murder wasn't the work of one man, but of many. That night, Edgar returned alone to Margaret's farmhouse. He left the door unlocked. Inside, he placed a single object on the kitchen table. A notebook. Blank pages. Except the first. On it, he wrote a sentence in thick black ink. I know why she died. Patrick stood in the shadows near the doorway.
You're inviting them.
No. I'm challenging them.
It didn't take long. 2 nights later, Edgar noticed it. A symbol scratched into the dirt near his car. Rough. Quick. Intentional. Patrick crouched beside it.
They've seen you.
And they've accepted.
That same night, someone knocked on the door of his temporary office. A woman. Middle-aged. Nervous hands. Forced smile.
I heard you were asking questions. Some of us meet to pray.
Edgar stepped aside and let her in. Her name was Evelyn Crow. She spoke carefully. Avoided certain words. Chose others with ritual precision. Patrick listened, silent.
We believe the land listens, that it remembers.
And those who stop listening?
They must be reminded.
After she left, Patrick exhaled.
That wasn't an invitation. It was a warning.
Edgar closed the door and locked it.
No, that was a test. And they're about to see how far I'm willing to go.
The invitation did not come in words. It came in silence. For 2 days, nothing happened. No visits. No symbols. No whispers carried by neighbors pretending to talk about weather and crops. Patrick noticed it first.
They've gone quiet. That's never a good sign.
Edgar tightened his coat as they walked along the narrow dirt road between the fields.
Silence is how predators measure distance.
On the 3rd night, Edgar felt it. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. Not from one direction, but many. The road was empty. The field stretched endlessly, dark and wet. Yet every step felt counted. Patrick lowered his voice.
They want you away from town.
Yes. And somewhere familiar to them.
A lantern flickered ahead. Hanging from a fence post. Unlit. Waiting. Carved into the wood beneath the lantern was a symbol Edgar now recognized. The same circular mark. The same broken lines. Patrick swallowed.
That's not a threat.
It's permission.
He reached out and lit the lantern. The flame steadied almost instantly. From the darkness, footsteps began to emerge. Slow. Measured. Unhurried. They did not rush. Men and women appeared one by one between the fields. Faces hidden behind crude masks of cloth and carved wood. No one spoke. Patrick counted at least 12.
They're surrounding us.
That was always the plan.
A figure stepped forward. Taller than the rest. Unmasked. A man in his late 50s. Weathered face. Calm eyes.
You were told to stop asking questions.
And you were told Margaret would stay silent.
She broke the bond.
The unmasked man gestured toward the fields.
Walk, the voice wishes to see you.
This is it.
Yes. And we're exactly where they want us.
They walked. The circle closed behind them. The path led to an abandoned structure. An old grain silo. Its metal walls were rusted. Its doors partially collapsed. Inside, candles burned in a wide circle, their flames trembling in the damp air. Symbols covered the floor. Patrick whispered.
This is where it happens.
Edgar stepped inside the circle without hesitation.
And where it ends.
They were left alone. No guards. No ropes. No threats. Just the candles. Minutes passed. Patrick broke the silence.
They're confident.
No. They're obedient.
A sound echoed from above. Footsteps on metal stairs. Slow. Deliberate. Someone was coming down. The candles flickered. The air grew colder. Edgar raised his eyes.
Here comes the voice.
The footsteps stopped above them. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a voice descended from the darkness. Calm, measured, almost gentle.
You entered without resistance.
Resistance implies fear. I'm here for answers.
You came because you believe you already understand.
The figure stepped into the candlelight. He was not imposing. Not dramatic. Just an ordinary man in a dark coat, his face unremarkable, his eyes unsettlingly clear. Patrick stiffened beside Edgar.
That's him, the leader.
No, I am only the mouth. You call us a cult, but we are a correction.
You murder those who refuse to obey.
We remove those who poison the whole.
Margaret was afraid.
Yes. She remembered who she was before us.
Silence followed. Then Edgar asked.
Did you give the order?
I reminded them of their duty.
The voice turned fully toward Edgar.
You see patterns. You understand hierarchy, meaning, structure.
He's recruiting you.
You don't belong with the law. You belong with truth.
And what happens when truth wants to leave?
Then truth must be silenced.
Edgar took a slow step back. Patrick's heart pounded. Now. Edgar slipped his hand into his coat pocket. Not for a weapon. For a match. He struck it. The flame flared brightly. The voice stiffened. From outside the silo, a distant sound cut through the night. Engines. Multiple. Patrick exhaled sharply.
You called them.
No. They followed you.
The voice's calm finally cracked. Outside, masked figures began to shout. Orders overlapped. Panic replaced ritual. Sheriff's lights flashed through the broken metal walls. Red. Blue. Relentless. The voice stepped back.
You don't understand. This will never end.
No. It just did.
The candles were extinguished one by one. The circle broke. Patrick let out a breath he'd been holding for far too long. As deputies stormed the silo, Edgar stood still. Watching the voice disappear into custody. Morning arrived reluctantly. The rain had stopped, but the land was soaked, as if the soil itself were trying to wash away what had happened during the night. The grain silo stood silent now. No candles. No symbols. No voices. Only mud, footprints, and men in uniforms. Masked figures were lined up near the patrol cars. Some cried. Some stared at the ground. Others looked confused, as if they had only just awakened from a long dream. Patrick watched them carefully.
They don't look like killers.
That's how it works.
By midday, the confessions began. Not all at once. Not willingly. But inevitably. One neighbor spoke of meetings. Another of chance. Another of the night Margaret died. They said it was necessary. They said she was sick. They said obedience was mercy. The story repeated itself with minor differences. Different mouths. Same voice. Patrick listened from the edge of the room.
They really believed it.
Belief doesn't absolve guilt.
The leader sat alone in a small interrogation room. No mask now. No followers. Just a man. He looked up when Edgar entered.
You broke the circle. But circles can be redrawn.
Edgar placed Margaret's photograph on the table.
She crawled from the living room to the kitchen. She didn't die immediately. She knew she was being punished. You didn't touch her, but your words did.
Words are powerful.
Yes. That's why you won't use them anymore.
The farmhouse was sealed. Evidence bags filled the back of trucks. Chalk outlines faded under the sun. Patrick walked beside Edgar along the dirt road.
So that's it? They go to prison, the town forgets?
No. The town will remember.
For how long?
Long enough for fear to change shape.
Before leaving, Edgar returned once more to the farmhouse. The kitchen floor had been scrubbed clean. Too clean. He stood where Margaret had fallen. Imagined the pain. The confusion. The betrayal.
She chose to leave. That mattered.
Yes. And that's why they killed her.
He turned off the light and closed the door behind him. That night, Edgar sat alone in his temporary office. The case file lay closed. Solved. Official. Patrick leaned against the wall.
You did good.
Cults don't die. They scatter.
Then you'll keep chasing them.
Yes. As long as they keep believing.
Somewhere beyond the fields. The land listened. And remembered.